When you're young, love seems like a fairy tale. The world is bright, the possibilities endless, and the heart is untouched by the complexities of life. At just 5 years old, I thought I had found my prince. His name was Jake. He wasn't just any boy in my kindergarten class. No, he was something special. He had sandy blonde hair that seemed to shine like the sun, eyes that sparkled with mischief, and a smile that made my little heart race whenever he looked at me. I remember the way he always saved me a seat during snack time, and how he'd let me borrow his crayons when I'd forget mine. We were inseparable, at least in my world. We shared everything: the same swings at recess, the same love for recess snacks, and our favorite games during lunchtime. Jake wasn't like the other boys. While they were busy teasing the girls and making fun of the girls who didn't fit in, Jake was kind. He didn't care about being popular or fitting into the typical mold that other kids followed. He was just Jake, and that was enough for me. It wasn't the kind of love that needed any grand gestures or declarations. It was the simple love of a 5-year-old, pure and innocent. We spent countless hours together, sitting next to each other on the rug during story time, passing notes to each other under the desk, sharing secrets only we knew. I thought he felt the same way about me. To me, he was perfect, and I could already picture us growing up together, sitting side by side during every school dance, laughing at silly jokes no one else understood. It was the kind of love you believe in when you're young, and the world hasn't yet taught you that love can sometimes be fleeting and complicated. Then, one fateful day, something changed. We were both in first grade now, and the magic of our bond seemed even more real. I remember the exact moment I realized that I wanted more than just the little moments at school, more than just the notes and the secrets. I wanted to share my world with Jake outside of the classroom. I wanted him to come over and see the things that made my world unique. I begged my parents for days, no weeks, for permission to invite Jake over for a playdate. I was nervous, of course, but more than anything, I was thrilled at the thought of having him in my home, of showing him my room, my dolls, and my secret stash of candy that I'd never shared with anyone before. Finally, after what felt like forever, my parents agreed. I couldn't believe it. Jake was coming to my house. This was the moment I had dreamed of. I spent hours preparing, arranging my dolls just so, laying out board games and puzzles, and setting out my favorite snacks. Everything had to be perfect. My heart was racing, and I could hardly sit still as I waited for his arrival. My excitement was palpable, and the world seemed to stand still in anticipation. When Jake finally walked through the door, I felt a surge of happiness flood over me. My palms were sweaty, my mouth dry, but I didn't care. I couldn't stop smiling. I led him inside, holding his hand a little tighter than I probably should have. My little heart was bursting. He was here. My prince, my first love, was finally here. "Come on, Jake, let's play," I said, practically dragging him into my room. But there was one thing I didn't anticipate. I had no idea how quickly things could go wrong. The playdate started off like a dream. We played with my dolls, we built forts out of pillows, and we even started to play board games together. But then, after what felt like an eternity of perfect fun, Jake suddenly got up. "I need to go to the bathroom," he said, and I smiled, nodding eagerly. "Sure, it's right down the hall." It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. I didn't think twice about it. I stayed behind, rearranging the dolls again, just in case he wanted to play with them later. But then, a minute passed, and then 2, 3, and still no sign of him. I started to feel a pang of confusion. Was something wrong? Why wasn't he coming back? I tried to ignore the unease that started to creep into my chest, but it was no use. I couldn't sit still any longer. I got up from my room and walked down the hallway, calling out his name softly. "Jake, are you okay?" But there was no response. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The living room, empty. The kitchen, also empty. Where was he? A sense of dread started to settle in. Maybe he had just gotten lost in the house, or maybe... No, that wasn't it. He had to be somewhere. And then I heard it. Laughter. It was coming from down the hall, from Alex's room. My stomach twisted. I didn't know why, but something in me knew exactly what I was about to find. I pushed open the door slowly, hesitating for just a second before stepping into the room. And that's when I saw them. Jake and Alex were sitting on the floor, hunched over the TV, playing video games. They were laughing, joking, completely ignoring the fact that I was standing in the doorway. Jake didn't even look at me. My heart dropped. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what was happening. Jake had promised me we would play together, but there he was, acting like I didn't exist, laughing with Alex as though he had forgotten all about me. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words caught in my throat. I couldn't believe it. My first love, the boy I had adored for as long as I could remember, was sitting there, completely absorbed in something else, something I wasn't a part of. "Jake," I said, my voice shaky. "Do you want to come play with me? I have more toys in my room." He glanced at me briefly, his expression unreadable, then turned back to the game without a word. "No thanks," he muttered, his eyes fixed on the screen. I was stunned. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. I tried again, my voice more desperate this time. "Maybe we can all play together?" But Alex barely looked up. "This is a two-player game," he said dismissively, his tone cold. And without another word, he shut the door in my face. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick and suffocating. I turned around slowly, my legs weak beneath me. It was like I had just been punched in the gut. I walked back to my room, every step heavier than the last. My heart, which had once been full of excitement and hope, was now full of confusion and hurt. I sat down on my bed, surrounded by my toys, my games, and the remnants of my playdate that had turned into a nightmare. I stared at the wall, willing myself not to cry, but the tears came anyway. I couldn't understand. Why had Jake chosen Alex? Why had he left me so easily to hang out with my brother? I didn't speak to Alex for an entire week. Every time I saw him, I felt a new wave of anger rise up inside me. How could he do that? How could he steal my prince? How could he make me feel so invisible? I told myself it didn't matter. It was just a silly childhood crush, right? But even now, as an adult, I can't shake the memory of that moment. The betrayal, the feeling of being discarded so easily, the sting of rejection, so innocent, yet so deep. Over 20 years have passed, and I've tried to move on, tried to tell myself it's not a big deal. But the truth is, it still stings. Every time I see Alex and Jake together, laughing, hanging out like nothing ever happened, I feel that old ache in my chest. The ache of a little girl who thought love was simple, only to learn that it wasn't. Some wounds don't heal with time. Some betrayals stay with you buried deep inside long after the world has moved on. And no matter how hard I try to let go, I'll always remember that play date. The day Jake became my first love, and my brother became the one who took it all away.